Hi, and welcome back to the Whatever It Looks Like podcast. This is episode 2, and we are jumping into a theme that I feel like a lot of new believers, even some people who are seasoned believers, struggle with. The topic today is You Are Worthy of Love. So, a portion of today's episode is going to be some of my testimony, and a portion of today's episode is going to be tying it into the Bible, biblical theme. So, I hope that you enjoyed today's episode as we dive in. Um, so, I guess to start, I will go back to um, young adult, my young adult journey. Before I met my husband, I would say that my life would be described as destructive. I didn't have a lot of value in myself. I didn't have a lot of value in who I was as a person. I continued to surround myself with people who also didn't value me. Not so much my friends. My friends always loved and supported me, but I would find myself in situations where I would look for love in a relationship or in a guy. And, in that time in my life, I didn't make the best decisions. And it really led me to like this, like, see, the more I sought it, the more I sought this, like, whatever I thought love looked like, the further I actually got away from it. And I did not have a lot of self worth. I had these like huge barriers around me. I did not let people in close. Um, and my journey with Christ actually starts with my husband. Um, so he My husband and I knew each other in high school. He was a very quiet, timid. I knew he went to youth group. I knew he was involved with the church, and he was just this very quiet, meek guy, very big, but quiet. And so I was working in at age 19. I was working at a gas station locally, and my husband, who obviously at the time wasn't, came into the gas station and was like, "Hey, how are you?" And he just seemed like super bubbly and happy to see me. And I'm like, I can't reconcile those two people. Who is this? And he continued to talk to me. He would stop in pretty regularly for Arizona tea. I just think maybe he was very thirsty, and especially when I was on shift. But he would come in quite a bit and he would just chat with me. And in that time period, I definitely would not have given a nice guy a chance. I would have never thought, like, in a million years to date my husband because he was just this super I was like, I would literally probably destroy this man's life. Like, he should stay 150 feet away from me at all time. And so he just kept coming around, and I remember one day I had just gotten through the situation with this guy who, of course, was like, "You don't wanna be with me, I'm a bad boy," whatever. Anyway, I felt like I could fix him, and that obviously blew up in my face, and I called Tyler and I said, "I just feel like such crap. I feel like I am like used goods. Nobody will love me. I've lived my life stupid. I've done a bunch of dumb things." And I just start telling him all this stuff. Like, almost in a self-sabotage, like the more ugly things I tell him, he's also gonna not like me. And he just listened. And then after a little while, he said, your life is like a roller coaster, and you continue to like brace yourself for the low lows, and you get excited for the highs, but you're just living your life very fast. And is this the way you want to continue to live it?" And I kind of just was like, I like paused long enough that he was like, "Hello, are you there? Are you still there?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I don't want to be too much, but I want you to know that no matter what you do, God loves you, and he's never not going to love you." I hung up on him. I actually hung up on him, and I didn't talk to him for like 2 weeks because it was just so much for me to process that, like, in this season that I'm like, I am worthy of nothing. There's this person who's telling me that there's somebody who feels like I'm worthy of something. And so I didn't talk to him for 2 weeks. And during that time period, I really thought about what he said, and I was like, you know, maybe he's on to something. Maybe he's not completely crazy. And 2 weeks went by and I reached out to his sister because I also went to school with his sister. So I knew if I said, hey, I was thinking about asking Tyler out, that she'd freak out and immediately tell Tyler. So I messaged her. I was like, "Hey, how would you feel if I started dating your brother?" And she was like, "Of course." She did exactly what I thought she was gonna do. And I messaged Tyler, and I was kind of trying to gauge, how he would react by messaging her. And so I said, "Hey, would you come down to the gas station tonight? I'm working." And right away he texted back and said, "No." I felt so sick to my stomach. I was like, "Oh no, I've really done it. I've actually succeeded in chasing away this person who told me, like nice things about me. Like I succeeded in my mission to make him think that I was also a terrible dirtbag." And he like a couple minutes later, he messaged me and said, "Just kidding. I'll be down in a few minutes." And I mean, I've never been so relieved. He came down. I would say the rest is history. There's so much more to it, but um we dated for a month at that point, and he he kept mentioning church to me. I knew it was a big deal to him, but I at the time I didn't even know what I believed in, and I knew there was a God, but I didn't know. I really struggled a lot with with feeling adequate enough. And so I was like, I'm not a church person. I'm like not a person who goes to church. Like I actually said things like if I walk into church, I'm probably gonna like catch fire on the spot. And so a couple times he asked me, and then about a month into dating, he goes, "Hey, I don't want to push. Church is really important to me. And I just ask that you go one time. If you absolutely hate it, I will never make you go back. But I want you to try it at least once, and that will let me know that you care enough to actually try this thing that I am passionate about." So I was like, "Oh, okay, fine, I'll go." So a couple Sundays later, we decide that's the Sunday we're gonna go, and I get to his church. I don't know what I expected, and he really didn't warn me, which was terrible of him. But the church that I had spent some of my childhood in was a Methodist church, and the church that my husband attended from childhood until like probably 5 years ago was a Pentecostal church. Now, if you know anything about those denominations, a Methodist church is very, very different from a Pentecostal church. My grandma's church was a church that you pulled like hymnals out of the seat and you like sang from sheet music while somebody played the organ. And he was like taking me to this church where they worshiped for like 40 minutes and at least, and they were singing and they were dancing and they were laying hands on people and praying and crying. And I was like, this is church. This is church. And I was super uncomfortable the whole time. And I was like, yeah, for sure, I'm not gonna do this again. And my I remember thinking to myself before I got to church, and I didn't even really know if it was a prayer, but I was like, God, if you don't meet me here in this time, you're only getting one chance. And because I'm just a very stubborn person as well. And so I was sitting in the pew, and the pastor had called up people for an altar call, and I don't remember what the altar call was for. And a bunch of people came up, and he prayed for them, and they were crying, and some people were laying on the ground. So there's blankets, there's tissues, and I was like, I am not going up there if he calls on me. And service ended, and he came up to me and he said, "I would really love to pray for you." And in my mind, I'm thinking, "Oh no, I saw what just happened to them. I'm good. I'm not crying in front of anybody, let alone doing all the rest of that stuff." And but the people pleaser in me was like, "Okay." So he started to pray for me. And at first he said some things that I could have said were like generic things like, "You have a beautiful soul and you're such a sweet person and God loves you." And I'm like, Okay, okay." He probably says that to all the people that he prays for. And then he said, your father really wasn't around when you were a child. And every time that you prayed in your closet and you cried in your closet, God was with you." And I mean, my eyes got like the size of saucers because at that point I had not told my husband any of that. And I really hadn't, I mean, my mom probably didn't even know, like people close to me didn't even know that I would do that when I would get really down and depressed and feeling hopeless. I would sit in my closet and I would pray. And I would ask God to show himself in my life, and I would get so frustrated because this was like in my early teens into older teens, and I'm like, "God, where are you in this situation? I don't understand where you're at." And I just started crying because I was like, "No way did this guy know this. He's never met me ever before in my life." And I knew in that moment, I knew that I knew that I knew that God was real. And I kind of laughed after I left because I was like, "Okay, well, I challenged you, like, in a way and said, you have to meet me here today or I'm not coming back." And he waited until the last minute, until the altar call was done and people were dismissing from church to be like, "Okay, here's your sign. Here's your thing. Here's me saying that I was, I acknowledge you, like, you are important to me." And it it were you know, I went through I would like to say that the feeling of being loved and, like, feeling worthy, like, came instantaneous, but it didn't. It took time, it took a lot of patience, it took a lot of endurance, it took a lot of praying for me to realize that there really was that God was truthfully saying that I was worthy, that he sent his son to die for me, and that if if anything, like, God, I am part of the story, like I am part of God's story. He has a purpose for me. And I don't remember where I heard this story first, if it was me teaching it in kids' church, because I almost right away jumped into helping in kids' ministry, because I've always been really good with kids. And so I started teaching, and I don't know if I taught it there first or I heard it somewhere, but they were talking about the story of the woman at the well. And she came in the heat of the day. So she came in the time that was most inconvenient, and a time that other people weren't going to go, because she didn't want to be bothered by anybody. She didn't want the other people, chattering about her behind her back. She didn't feel welcome to be with the other women. She knew that she had lived a life that was less than desirable, and she felt super inadequate. So she goes in the middle of the day in the highest, like the hottest heat, to get water from the well. And Jesus meets her there. Jesus meets her at the well, and he kind of baits her a little bit, and he says, "Go get your husband." And she just like looks at him, and he's like, "Oh, you can't, because you don't live with your husband. The man you live with isn't your husband. And matter of fact, you've had multiple husbands." And he starts telling her, about who she is so she can confront who she is. But he also offers her water from a well that she will never have to be thirsty again. He offers her living water. And what's fascinating about that is that in the context of that time, she's a Gentile. She's not a Jewish woman. And he is going out of his way in the middle of the day to meet this woman here, who everybody, all the girls gossip about, who feels bad about herself, who feels so far away from God. And he said, "I know everything that you've ever done, and I still have this for you. I still want to give you this water that makes it so that you're never thirsty. I still want to provide for you. I still want you to be part of my family." And I remember hearing that story for the first time, and it just totally transforming my life, because I I have felt that. I have felt like that woman, and felt like I've made so many mistakes. How could there be a God that would love me regardless or in spite of? And when my husband and I at one point were doing helping in youth ministry, and if you haven't seen that episode of The Chosen, I really, really suggest you watch it because the seeing it in cinema, I guess, is like, so crazy. And that watching that play out, I am not a crier. I don't really cry in front of people. And I remember watching that in youth group, and I just had tears streaming down my face, like tears I couldn't control or stop from coming down. And one of the youth girls turned around and looked at me, and I was like, "I'm fine. Turn around. Miss Heather is okay." But I just was so touched by seeing it. Like, I was touched by hearing it, and then I was even more blessed by seeing it, like, in this cinematic way, like, actually played out for me in real life. And, it so much touched my heart. And I think all of us have, like, a story or a person or a thing that we cling to from the Bible, or something that kinda, like, changed the way that we view things. I just know without a doubt that my life would be so deeply different if my husband hadn't met me when I was 19. I would like to believe that I still would have a relationship with Jesus, but having my husband step in to my life and be this person who drew me closer to the Lord, and then having God meet me that day at church, it was almost like, the woman at the well where Jesus met her in the heat of the day. The Lord met me at the last possible moment, and told me, all the things that I had been through, and how I was living my life, and I had to confront those things. And I am just so thankful for that. I Not everybody has that. Not everybody has that person in their lives, and not everybody is fortunate, as fortunate as me, to meet their husband so young. But you have friends, you have people who go to church with you, and I am a big believer that you should be in a body, because you have this gathering of people. You have people who will hold you accountable, people who will minister to you, people who love you, people who will be in your corner. And you miss that so much if you don't fellowship with others. But I joke a lot. I did make a lot of really bad decisions in my young adult years, and I met my husband when I was 19 and he was 19, and our brains, weren't even fully developed. But I always tell people, out of all the bad decisions that I made, Tyler was not one of them. And I am so, so thankful to have him in my life, because he really reinforced that, like, you are worthy to be loved. You are worthy to be loved by Jesus. He came for you. He met that woman at the well. He is so many other times and stories in the Bible. He meets people in all sorts of situations, all sorts of troubles, all sorts of hardships, different walks, different faith backings, different things, and he meets them and he totally transforms their life. So if you're struggling with feeling loved, and if you're struggling with your worth, just know that there is a God who loves you so, so much. And if he can save somebody like me, if he can pull me out of that pit and give me a purpose and renew my meaning and give me a value, then he can absolutely do it for you. So I just hope that this episode finds you well. I hope that everything that you heard today, that you received it. If you have any questions about what was shared today, feel free to leave a comment, and you have a blessed, blessed week. If you enjoyed the content in today's episode, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to this channel so that you can catch updates on all future episodes. Again, thank you for joining the Whatever It Looks Like podcast. Hope to see you again soon.